everyone. Welcome back from the break. My name is Sarah Hernandez, and for a visual description, I am both a white and Latina woman with dark hair, and I wear glasses, and I'm wearing a black sweater. And I'm the outreach manager for My Dog Is My Home, so you might have received an email or a phone call from me during the conference outreach process. And I'm also your moderator for this session. So you have joined the workshop Co-Regulation, Recognizing and Caring for Trauma in Self and Others. And this workshop was developed to provide an opportunity for us as workers in the animal welfare and homeless services professions to reflect on our own personal trauma and the way that impacts our relationships with clients, animals, and our colleagues who also bring their complex histories to the interactions. Our workshop facilitator today is Sharon Venchula. Sharon is a doctor of occupational therapy, human dog bond facilitator, somatic consent educator, and therapeutic interaction specialist. She founded the Human Canine Collaborative and provides coaching, consulting, and classes to support humans and dogs through trauma recovery, grief journeying, and lifestyle modification by cultivating skills in nervous system regulation and somatic consent. She also provides continuing education opportunities to dog care professionals and animal-assisted intervention providers focused on trauma-informed care and consent-based interactions with dogs. Thank you so much for joining us, Sharon.
You're welcome, and thank you, Sarah, for that warm introduction. My name is Sharon. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white female-bodied human with a light brown shoulder-length hair, and I'm wearing a gray sweater with a white collared top. And I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation today. Welcome to Co-Regulation, Recognizing and Caring for Trauma in Self and Others. This is our plan for this workshop. I'm going to start us off with a guided breath and movement exercise. Then we're going to do some learning about what co-regulation is. I'm going to introduce you to the yes-no spectrum framework for understanding how perception of safety or danger contributes to behavior. And we're going to look at some video examples. Then we're going to do a stress relief movement exercise. And then we're going to play a little game that's called Practice Saying No. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to comment on during the workshop, go ahead and put it in the chat, and then we can I can answer those questions at the end. So if you'd like to join the breathing and movement exercise, go ahead. And if not, that's cool too. You can adjust your camera to your comfort level. Go ahead and get comfortable in your seat. And we're going to move our arms out and up as high as they comfortably go while we breathe in. And then we're going to move them down while we breathe out. So go ahead and breathe in through your nose as you raise your arms up. And breathe out through your mouth as you slowly lower your arms back down. We'll do 2 more times. Breathe in through your nose and raise your arms. And breathe out through your mouth and lower your arms. And 1 more time. Breathe in through your nose, arms up. And out through your mouth, arms down. All right, thanks for doing that with me. So what is co-regulation? Basically, nervous system regulation, when we do it on our own or with others, is just shifting from one nervous system state to another. And co-regulation is shifting from one state to another with somebody else. And we can do this intentionally through sharing an activity or an experience. Co-regulation, when utilized intentionally, can support a shift to feeling like the environment or the situation is safe. It can help us feel safe, and it can help others feel safe. And co-regulation can also help to teach others how to learn how to shift their nervous systems from one state to another. So it's a skill building strategy as well. So what are we talking about when I say nervous system states? We have 3, and you can think of these as like settings that your nervous system can be in. So if you go into a certain setting, that means certain parts of your body are turned on or are activated in order to support you in doing a certain thing. So the first setting we're going to look at is called immobilized. This setting is for digestion and immune function and conserving energy. So the parts of our body that are turned on when we're in the immobilized setting are our digestive organs. So all of our intestines and our stomach and all of the supporting organs that go into digesting food and distributing energy from the food to the body are turned on in this setting. And also our immune organs. So the organs that support our immune function, which a lot of those are the digestive organs as well as others. And then we're immobilized. So we're conserving energy in this situation. And all of these functions are designed to support survival. The next nervous system state or setting is the mobilized state. And this one is for movement. So all of the things that you need to be able to move are turned on. So that's your skeletal muscles, your arms and legs, your heart's beating faster and your lungs are breathing faster. You don't need the thinking part of your brain in order to move. So in the mobilized state, that part of the body is not turned on very high. Same thing with immobilized. We don't need the thinking part of the brain in order to digest food, support immune function, or conserve energy. Back to the mobilized state, this state is also really good for helping us identify and recognize danger in the environment. So that means our senses actually make adjustments so that we can more easily recognize danger. So in the mobilized state, you might hear sounds and then interpret them as potential threats, or you might be more likely to hear certain types of sounds. And in this state, we are preparing to spend a lot of energy. So again, a lot of movement takes place in this state, and we're using the energy that we have in our body. The immobilized state and the mobilized states are states that we share with most other vertebrate animals. And this third state, social connected, we share with other mammals, including companion animals. In this state, all of the things that we need to be able to talk and listen to another being are turned on. So that's our eyes and our ears, our voice. Our heart, again, is involved in this state. This function of the heart in the social connected state kind of works in tandem with the heart function of the mobilized state. So in mobilized, we speed up the heart rate, and then in social connected, the heart rate can slow down or adjust to another person. In this state, our senses adjust to be able to help us identify safety. So our muscles in our inner ear actually change to make it easier for us to hear and recognize human voices. And this state is where intentional co-regulation is possible. So we're going to talk about how we can recognize trauma, right? And in most situations, we can't really recognize that a person or an animal, a non-human animal, is behaving in a way that we can say, oh, yes, that's because they experienced trauma. A lot of the times, we don't have the awareness over ourselves to recognize whether our behavior right now is being stimulated by something in the past. And very often, it's usually a combination of what happened to us in the past and what's happening now. And what we do know is what's happening right now. We know how we're behaving, how we're feeling, and how we're seeing others behave. When we think about a trauma response, I think about how post-traumatic stress is an adaptation. It's not a disorder. It's not a defect. It's not something that's wrong with you. Post-traumatic stress can be disabling, however, meaning that it can impede your ability to do the things that you need to do. But post-traumatic stress is the way that your nervous system changes to help you survive better, to help you be able to recognize danger and escape from it or fight it off or hide and then recover. And so in post-traumatic stress, we often see that beings are spending more time in the mobilized state and the immobilized state. So we're going to zoom in a little bit more on behavior, and we're going to shift to the yes-no spectrum. So we have our 3 nervous system states here, and I put this vertical line to demonstrate that we can shift between the states. We can shift from any state to any other state. So just because of this 2-dimensional representation, I don't want you to think we have to go through social connected to get to immobilized or vice versa. We can go from any of these states to any other state. And I'm also going to put a horizontal line here. This is our spectrum from yes to no, where we have yes on one side, no on the other, and maybe is everywhere in between. This is a spectrum from safety to life-threatening danger. So the individual that we are talking about, maybe it's ourselves that we're thinking about, maybe we're focusing on someone else. Whatever the individual in question, whatever individual we're focusing on, that's the individual who decides whether they're perceiving safety or danger. Okay, so if I'm giving support to another human and they perceive danger, it doesn't matter if I don't perceive danger, because they do. And that's what's really important. Or if I'm working with a dog, whatever the dog is perceiving is valid. Just because I don't see what they're seeing or hear what they're hearing doesn't mean there's nothing there to be scared of. So we can see a lot of changes and variations in the nervous system states and in behavior, depending on whether the perception is that the environment is safe or that the environment is dangerous. So one of the behaviors that we see in the immobilized state is sleeping. And when you feel safe and you're in the immobilized state, you can get a really good night's sleep. You're not going to get a great night's sleep if you're not feeling safe, even if you're in the immobilized state. I also think about grief in the immobilized state when there's a perception of safety. I think every being alive who has evolved in a social ecosystem experiences grief after a loss, but we often do not allow ourselves to go through the grieving process if we don't feel safe doing that. And because we have to be immobilized. Grief is like a state of collapse in a way. Depression occurs also in the immobilized state, but there is not a feeling of safety. So there's a feeling of disconnect, a difficulty moving, a numbness. And your freeze response is also here. Freezing is like, you've heard the expression, a deer in the headlights. So literally being frozen and not able to move. Freezing is also fainting or dissociating. When I experience a freeze, I've noticed that there are degrees of freezing. So one of the more subtle signs that I'm in a freeze is that I'm feeling overwhelmed, or my mind is blank. I'm not able to think of a response to a question. I notice that I say, I don't know a lot. And my response might continually be, I don't know, because I'm having a hard time thinking. It also, something called mutism can occur with a freeze, where you literally are feeling paralyzed. You can't open your mouth and get anything out, even if you do have ideas about what to say. And there's also a feeling of, I can't move right now. This is a really important response because it supports survival. Sometimes the best thing to do is say nothing and do nothing. And sometimes that's the only thing that you can do. And if you've done that in a situation and you survived, then you did something that helped you survive. Sometimes we can kind of be in between two states. Because when our nervous system is shifting from one state to another, it doesn't happen instantaneously. There's like time that it takes for certain organs to turn off and other organs to turn on. I think about hygiene and medical care needing a sort of social connected state, but also immobilization, right? We need to sit still when we get an injection or when a doctor examines us. We want our dogs to sit still when we trim their nails or when the veterinarian examines them. But this requires that we also feel safe, right? And it's really challenging. I don't know if there's a time when I've been to a doctor and felt completely safe, even though I had to do it, even if I wanted to do it. And I think about this with animals a lot, how challenging veterinary and hygiene care can be when they don't feel safe. And I think about how can we help them feel safer so that they can get the care that they need. We're going to move more into the social connected states. And I put eating here. Eating is the beginning. It's like the first step of digestion, but eating for humans, and from what I've seen with a lot of dogs, eating can be a really social experience. And we do have to have some level of like alertness and some movement in order to be able to eat, but we also need to feel safe. I'm not going to eat if I don't feel safe or if I feel stressed. And some dogs, if any of you have a dog at home that's picky, think about this. Does your dog feel safe right now? Could they be scared? And that's why they're not eating. Also, learning and teaching happens in the social connected state only when we feel safe. We cannot learn effectively when we're not safe, and we can't learn when we're moving around or when we're not awake enough to move around. Same thing with teaching. I can't teach you anything today if I don't feel safe doing it. And again, co-regulation happens in the social connected state, and we can intentionally co-regulate when we feel safe and are in the social connected state. Now, we can also be in the social connected state but not feel safe. And this is where appeasement occurs. Appeasement is people pleasing. If you've ever heard yourself say, whatever you want, I don't care, whatever you want, you decide. Or if you notice that your dog, right? A great example that I think about with appeasement is when we get home at the end of the day and our dog chewed up the garbage or our socks or whatever it is, and we're like, so frustrating, right? And then over time, we start to realize that, it seems like our dog feels guilty about this, right? Because when I come home, I don't even have to say anything. My dog just kind of shrinks down. Maybe they do like that little showing teeth kind of smile where they're like, or maybe they're like wagging their tail and kind of creeping toward you slowly. Your dog is appeasing you. They don't know what they did wrong. They don't feel guilty. What they know is that you're upset. And if they look really small and cute for a few minutes, then maybe you will not be so upset anymore. So appeasing is something that we do. We want to please somebody else so that they won't hurt us. An example from my experience of appeasement is one time I was walking with my dog Muggins down the street, and there was this dog who was in somebody's yard off the leash, and the dog came over to us. And then Muggins was like jumping all around, excited to see this dog. And the dog's owner came over as well and started asking Muggins to sit. And I was saying, they don't need to sit right now. They don't need to sit. Please stop asking them that. And this person did not listen to me. And instead, he proceeded to put his hands on Muggins and push Muggins into a sit. And then I gave this person a compliment. I recognized that they were not listening to me, that they thought they could put their hands on other beings and force them to do things. And I felt really scared. And so I didn't think really, I just reacted by saying, wow, you seem like you know a lot about dogs. I gave this person a compliment so that they wouldn't be mad at me and so they wouldn't hurt me. And then as soon as I could, I got the heck out of there and went home. So that is appeasement. It's not pleasing others just because you love to please others. It's pleasing them so that you can stay safe. So we're going to shift into the mobilized state. When we are mobilized and feeling safe, we can play, right? We can move around, we can run, we can play tag with our dogs or play tug with them. We can play board games with friends. We can try new things, lots of playfulness. We can also celebrate when we are mobilized. Celebration takes more energy, right? And there's also that flavor of social connection. But we need to feel joyful and excited when we're celebrating. Some of you might be cheering for your favorite basketball teams this week, and you'll be celebrating when they win. So you're going to be in a mobilized state when that happens. Over on the unsafe side of mobilization, we have anxiety. There's a lot of mobilization in anxiety. Anxiety looks like fidgeting. It feels like thoughts coming to your head, one right after the other really fast, and you can't stop them. Your head is racing or you're spinning in your head. It can feel like talking really fast, or just like, I can't stop talking, or, oh my gosh, I'm talking so much. We also have the fleeing and fighting responses in the mobilized state. So fleeing is obviously trying to leave a situation, and it can look like walking away or running away. Sometimes it looks like just turning your head away. And dogs do that quite a bit when they are saying, no, I don't want this. They'll just turn their head. Fleeing can also just feel like you want to escape a situation, even if you're not actually doing it. So if you're at a party and you're talking to someone and the conversation is kind of like going in a direction you don't like, or you don't feel comfortable with this person, you might start checking your watch, or maybe you're looking around, kind of looking past the person, trying to see if there's someone else who you can talk to. So you're looking for a way out, even if you aren't physically leaving the area. And then fighting, of course, does encompass physical fighting. So when we see dogs lunging and barking on leash, that's the fight response. And a lot of times they are doing that because they're on the leash. They don't have the option to flee, but they're not feeling safe. That's the ultimate reason why they're doing that. And with humans, we might not physically fight, but we could get defensive. So if you've ever had an experience where someone says something and you feel this urgent need to defend yourself, or to restate your point over and over, or to insist that you didn't mean it that way, that's the fight response coming up in you. You're trying to fight for your innocence, or for yourself to be seen in the way that you want to be seen. So with co-regulation, what we really want to be able to do is recognize where someone is on the no side. Okay, so we want to be able to see anxiety, fleeing, fighting, appeasing, dissociation, freezing, depression. We want to recognize that, and we want to do something to help them shift to the yes side of the spectrum. So we want to establish a sense of safety. They're not feeling safe over here. We want to do something to help them feel safe so that they can be over here. And the way that we do that is, as providers, as helpers, we need to be feeling safe and in a social connected state. So how do we do that? Well, the same things that help us to be in the social connected state and feeling safe are the same things that we can do to help others shift from a sense of danger to a sense of safety. And one of the things is movement. Movement is a sensory experience. Movement can help you shift from any nervous system state to any other nervous system state. So if you're mobilized, you already need to move, and going through that movement will help you spend that energy, complete your stress response, move you away from whatever is stressing you out or causing you danger so that you can slow down. Movement can help bring you out of a freeze response. One of the best types of movements is walking, if that's possible for you, because you're using both sides of the body in an alternating pattern. But if walking isn't possible, you can squeeze one hand and then the other, back and forth, or pat one side, then the other, pat, pat. Any kind of movement, doesn't matter how small, but any kind of movement will be helpful. Empathy. Empathy is really helpful for establishing a sense of safety. If you've ever had an experience where your dog is barking an alarm out the window and you go look out the window and you say, there's nothing there, stop barking. I bet you $1 million your dog does not stop barking after you say that, because you have just invalidated their experience. They know that there is something out there that's causing them to be scared. It might not be something that causes you to be scared, but if you can acknowledge how your dog is feeling or how your friend is feeling, maybe your friend is venting about something that happened at work and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound that bad. Oh, you shouldn't be that upset about that. Your friend is not going to be calmer after you say that. They're going to be more upset. But if you can say, wow, that sounds really frustrating, or wow, that does sound scary, or I can see that you're really scared about that. That's really helpful. That can help the nervous system to relax, to shift to a sense of safety, because it feels safer when someone else can see you, when they can see that you're having this upsetting experience and they don't tell you that it's wrong or that you shouldn't feel that way. And then self-determination. We feel safer when we have the ability to control what is happening to us. The same is for animals. Not having control over what happens to us is extremely scary. So if you can find a way in a situation that seems out of control, because sometimes we don't have control over everything. We don't have control over whether we're getting evicted or whether we're losing a job. But maybe there is something that we can control in that situation. Can I control what I do next? Can I control how I take care of myself? Maybe there's one or two things that you can find control over. And when you're with somebody else and helping somebody else, find ways to support them in having control over what's happening to them. So this is a transcript that I wrote about the beginning of a session with a client. We were doing a virtual session, and I realized after I started the session that I had forgotten to turn my light on, so I wasn't lit as well as I usually was. And instead of being flustered or telling the client that I needed to wait so that I could get myself set up better, I decided to give the client control over whether or not I turned the light on. And I loved that the client asked me to turn it on so that they could see what the difference was between light on and light off. So then I turned the light on and my client giggled a little bit because it was really intense, the light, and they realized that they preferred it with the light off. And I preferred it with the light off too. It was less intense for me also. So this only took maybe 30 seconds to do, but by telling the client, I want you to decide whether the light is on. I don't mind either way, you get to decide this. I gave the client control over what was happening to them, over what they saw, what they experienced. I communicated to them that their perspective was important to me. And that set up the session for them to be able to feel safe. They could be more vulnerable. They could be more engaged in what we were doing. Okay, this is a reminder for me, but also for you to take a breath and drink some water if you haven't in the last 30 minutes. And we are going to move on to our video examples. In this first video, this is a clip from the show Ted Lasso, season 2. I apologize if anybody is wanting to watch it and haven't yet, but you're going to see an adult human father bully his adult son. And it's pretty intense, but it's a great example of the nervous system states. So you're going to see a really good example of a mobilized state. You're going to see one person start out in the social connected state on the no side. And then that same person is going to jump to a flee response, then a flight response, then a freeze response. And then at the end, somebody else is going to perform an action that demonstrates co-regulation. So I'm going to stop my share so that I can share that video with you. All right, here is the video. I have put closed captions on only a couple of phrases in this video because there are not many words that matter in this. So don't worry if you can't understand what's being said, but there's an important couple of phrases that you will see typed out on the screen.
No chance. Oh. And there he is, my son. My own flesh and blood. Poor Jamie, my son. Now, maybe I'm thinking his heart's still in Manchester and that's why he missed that sitter in the first half. Oh. Woo! You absolutely balled it. You balled it, what were you thinking? Oh, I'm only kidding, eh? Hey, look, do us a favour and get them born bug past security. They want to go on the pitch, take a few snaps and all that, yeah?
Rather him not.
Yeah, they just want to look around. It'll only take a second.
I'd rather him not.
What? Well, you're not going to all go little moody bitch just because you got your ass served to you on a plate, are you?
Don't speak to me like that.
Huh?
Don't speak to me like that. Don't speak to me like that.
Okay, well, let's see if you can hear this. You know that Ickle TV show you made? You just made it easier for Manchester City to kick you to the curb. And look where you are now. Twaddling about with a bunch of amateurs. No offence, no offence. Huh? Don't turn your back on me, you pussy. Oh, yeah. Okay, you can have that one for free. You gotta go big time. Hey, let's have it, Jamie. Don't you forget where you came from. Watch the door. Oops.
All right. So there's one more video I'm going to share with you, and this one has a dog barking. So you're going to see the mobilized state in the dog. So look at all the body parts on the dog that are moving. And then you're going to see me, and I am engaging in an action to co-regulate with my dog, Muggins.
Who's there? Who's there? Yes, thank you for telling me. I know. Yes. Hey, Muggins. Yes. Hey, Muggins. Hey, Muggins. Yes. Yes. Hey, Muggins. I know. I know. Here. Hey, Muggins. Hey, Muggins.
All right. I'm going to share my PowerPoint one more time. All right, so this is a shakes the stress off exercise. Feel free to join this, but don't if you don't want to. You can do this seated or laying down. We're going to start by just shaking our hands, shake your arms. You can shake your torso or your head. And if you want to stand up, you can shake your whole body. And I like to do a big stretch afterward. So shaking the body, something that we can learn from dogs. Dogs often will shake their body as if they're wet, but they're not. And they do this after a stressful experience or sometimes just between one experience and another. And this is a way of providing some really fast, really intense movement input to your body, which is nourishing for the nervous system and can help shift you to another nervous system state. All right, so for our last activity before we have discussion and questions, I'm going to do a breakout room activity. So you'll be paired with one other person, unless we have an odd number, but you don't have to do this. So if you don't want to go into a breakout room, then you can go ahead and type that in the chat. Once you're in a breakout room, you are going to have 2 minutes and you and your partner are each going to take turns asking a question along the lines of, can I pet your dog? And you can ask variations of this, like, can I say hi to your dog? Can I pick up your dog? Can I give your dog a treat? The person answering is going to say no every single time. And then the person who asked responds with, thank you. And this is really important because it is hard to say no. It is also hard to hear no. We often feel embarrassed or hurt or ashamed when we hear a no. And the antidote for all of those uncomfortable feelings is gratitude. So if you can feel thankful that somebody told you what they're not wanting to do, then you're going to feel better and you're going to help the other person have an easier time saying no. And this is the same with humans and with dogs. I was having trouble with the breakout rooms, and just due to time, would you be willing to demonstrate the activity with me in front of everybody else? And you can say no to this. It's totally fine if you don't want to. And you can also ask questions if you don't know what I mean.
I would be happy to do it. I'll say the no.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That works great.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to pin you and then pin me. Okay, cool. So thank you, Sarah. Hey, Sarah, can I pet your dog?
No.
Thank you. Hey, Sarah, can I pick your dog up?
No, he would not like that.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Hey, Sarah, can you introduce me to your dog?
No. Save the question mark.
Yep, you got it. Thank you for letting me know. I really appreciate that. All right. So that's the practice saying no exercise. And it can be really helpful because when we practice something, we get better at it. So if you remember about this activity later on and you want to try it with a friend or a loved one, I encourage you to be a little playful and go ahead and give that a try. Okay. We have arrived at the question and answer portion of today's workshop. So Sarah, I think you can help me to, if there's anybody asking a question.
I'm going back to the beginning. We had a question from Angela about button talk targeting. And it was with the new trend with teaching our pets to talk by using button targeting. Do you feel that these buttons can be a tool to incorporate into this technique? And can you foresee our pets telling us what they need via button targeting? Or is that too much to expect from the animal, knowing they are more intelligent than we give them credit for?
Thanks for this question, Angela. I have multiple feelings about the talking buttons. On the one hand, I think the talking buttons do give dogs more ways to say things, to ask for what they need. I've seen some that have buttons for feeling words so that they can say they're happy or they're sad or they're scared. And I think when we introduce this type of vocabulary to dogs and we're intentional about using the same vocabulary when we speak to them, it can really improve the dog's quality of life because now they have more ways to say what's going on, to communicate what their needs are. That being said, teaching your dog to use buttons to communicate with you is requiring that your dog speak to you in your language, and it is eliminating your need to learn your dog's language. So it's placing the responsibility for the communication in the relationship on the dog. And I don't think that's fair. I also don't think it's necessary. We don't need the dog to be able to press buttons for us to be able to recognize how they feel or what they need. And the best example I have of this is when I first adopted my dog Muggins a few years ago, I was thinking about teaching them the talk buttons. And I never did because I never have come across a situation in which I don't know what they're saying to me, because I learned to be really attuned to Muggins, to understand their body language. And I also taught them specific skills that they can use to communicate specific things. So we don't have a need for extra buttons. Also, with the buttons, what happens when you leave your house and your buttons are at home? How does your dog communicate with you on a walk or on vacation or somewhere or at daycare? So we really want to have a way to teach our dogs to communicate that applies everywhere that they are.
Thank you, Sharon. We have a question from Barb, and this was regarding your video with Muggins.
Yeah.
Barb says, I do something similar with my dog when she barks at the window. I call it time in, but I don't give treats until we are settled. What do you think about treating before she settles? Is it rewarding the behavior?
That's a really common question. So a reward rewards whatever behavior happened within 2 seconds. Right? So if your dog is barking out the window and then they turn to look at you and then you give them a treat, you're rewarding them for looking at you, even if the bark happened 3 seconds ago, because the looking at you happened right before the treat. In terms of rewarding the behavior, we have to think about what the dog is feeling in that situation. So if they're barking at something out the window, they're feeling alarmed, maybe they're feeling scared, maybe they're feeling excited, but you can't reward feelings, right? You can't reward fear. You can't reward happiness. Feelings and emotions are not subject to operant conditioning. You also can't punish them. So neither rewarding nor punishing a dog when they feel a certain way is going to change their behavior. What we need to do is address the feeling. So if you're doing something similar where you're acknowledging that your dog is telling you something and maybe acknowledging how they feel about it, that's what's really helpful and what can really lead to a calmer composure. I use treats with Muggins in the video before Muggins is calm because I'm rewarding Muggins for looking at me and for responding to my voice. And those are behaviors that I can reward and that I want to continue. And you see in the video that the treats do not prevent Muggins from calming down. Muggins calms down pretty quickly, actually.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. And another question is, one of the inspirations of this workshop was a blog post that you wrote about a time your dog's behavior was triggering your own trauma. Can you share that story with us and where we can find it?
Yeah, thanks for remembering this. This was from my newsletter. You can find all my newsletters at hc-collab.com/newsletter. So that's on my website. And so this story was from when Muggins was younger. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and then I adopted Muggins, who was a very reactive puppy who grew really fast. And so triggering means that your body is remembering something that is similar to a time when you experienced significant stress or a traumatic event. And the something that your body is recognizing could be something in the environment that you see or hear or smell, or it could be something inside your body that you feel. And so what happens is your body recognizes, oh my gosh, this is the same as the trauma, or it feels the same as the trauma. And then your body starts to respond. Your nervous system shifts into that I don't feel safe side of the spectrum, and one of those trauma responses. And it can be like a really extreme response too. So like a really intense anxiety or flight response or freezing. So when Muggins was younger and we would walk down the street, Muggins would get really excited and really nervous when seeing other people and dogs. And Muggins also really looks and watches at people, and sometimes we'll just stop and look at people with their head kind of like adorably cocked to the side. And this would draw people to us. And so people would think they can come over to us with their dog or just by themselves. And then Muggins would be pulling me. So in my experience of trauma, some of the things that I experienced were not having control over my body, not being seen or heard, and being humiliated. And so in this situation where my dog is dragging me, pulling me because they're lunging, I don't have control over my body. And Muggins was not listening to me or looking at me. So I was not feeling seen or heard. The other person also wasn't really seeing me or hearing me because they would keep coming toward me. And then I'm also having this sense of humiliation because my dog is dragging me across the street. So that would trigger any of those fear responses in me. Sometimes I would freeze and just kind of have my eyes really wide, not know what to do. I'm just trying to hold back on the leash. Sometimes I would appease and I would just be like, oh, sure, yeah, you can come over to my dog, even though that's not at all what I wanted. Or sometimes I would fight. I would get really mad at Muggins and I would say stop pulling me. Or I would get mad at the person and say, go away. I don't want you here. But not really in a neighborly kind of way. Or I would flee. I would just turn and drag Muggins and run home as fast as I could. And it was really overwhelming, the whole situation. And it really affected my self-esteem as a dog professional because I couldn't even navigate these seemingly simple situations with my own dog. But these situations were really complex. A lot was happening. My perception of the situation was that I was not at all safe, and I wasn't. Muggins was dragging me. So neither of us were safe. And so, so that was my experience of Muggins triggering my trauma and what that was like for me.
Do you have any methods to use in a care team setting, supporting each other while supporting clients, keeping presence with the traumas, and keeping, I think, movement towards the common mission?
That's a really good question. What comes to mind is empathy. Something about empathy is that it's a skill. It's not something we're born knowing how to use. Because it involves naming feelings, right? We have to be aware of feelings. We have to be able to recognize them. And we also have to have a vocabulary for naming them. And we have to have practice at that so that we can know how to do it and when to do it. Also, empathy is like it's like a resource that runs out and then you have to refill it, so like you can't give empathy to somebody else if you don't have enough for yourself. And the way that we refill our empathy stock is by receiving empathy from others. So thinking about your care team, a great way to engage the care team in like renewing your empathy and learning empathy skills might be to like do some training to learn empathy skills, or to engage in conversations where somebody's sharing their story and other members of the team are naming the feelings that come up. Like, wow, that sounds really stressful, or that sounds like a really scary situation. Or like talking about the struggles of your work and really taking the time to name how it makes you feel and to feel those feelings. That can really help you to bond as a team, because that engaging in that type of activity can shift you into that perception of safety and social connection. And it can help you to refill your empathy so that you have more empathy to go out and give to the people you are caring for.
People are asking for your website. I put it in the chat, but not correctly because I'm on my phone. But it's holisticdogexpert.com, and all one word. So yes, that is her website. And we'll add it when we have the recording of the session. We'll pop that link and connect it to the recording as well. And I think we have one more. Let's see. Yeah, one more question. My dog tends to bark aggressively when people don't pet him or acknowledge him. I call this his borderline personality trait. Is there some way to break this habit? Why would he do this? I've had him since he was 5 weeks and have always treated him well, so it still confuses me as to his reasoning for this.
Mm-hmm. That does sound really confusing, and I'm glad that you're sharing this. One note I want to make is that we don't want to use labels like borderline personality to describe something about a person or a dog when we don't really know what's going on, because there is a really strong stigma against people with borderline personality disorder. And also, I can't give you any meaningful recommendations about this because I don't have enough information. But if you would like to do a behavior consultation with me, then I would be able to gather more information and give you some more meaningful advice about this question, because it sounds really, really challenging and confusing.
It was short question. What was your inspiration for the exercise today? It's a very creative exercise, and how did you come up with that?
The practice saying no.
Yeah.
I took some classes with somebody named Mia Schachter, who is a consent and boundaries coach, and I learned that exercise from them, and I found it so transformative because it was so hard to say no initially. Like, even though I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to say no, it was like really hard to say no to these questions. And it was hard to say thank you. It took me a really long time to actually feel gratitude when I heard somebody's no. And the way I got to the gratitude was by just saying thank you. Like, I used it as a script. I'm like, oh, I hear a no, I say thank you, and I'm just going to keep doing that. And I know eventually I will actually feel gratitude when someone says no. And now I do. And it's such a different experience.